Jake Miller thought he was just walking down the main street of an abandoned mining town that hot summer day. But when that golden light caught his eye streaming through the old saloon windows, it would change his world forever. Because the source of that light was the Crimson Valley treasure, missing for 20 years, and the woman guarding it held secrets that would both save Jake's life and put it in mortal danger. In the scorching heat of July, the ghost town of Ghost Creek sat baking under the Arizona sun like bread in an oven. The single-story wooden buildings had turned a reddish-brown color from years of punishment, their paint faded under the relentless sun, doors warped and twisted from the desert heat. Jake Miller's boots kicked up dust clouds with every step on the dirt road. Jake had been prospecting for gold in this region for the last 3 months. In his pocket he carried an old map left to him by his father, William Miller, faded ink drawings from 1847 telling tales of treasure buried somewhere in Ghost Creek. Most folks would dismiss such stories as fairy tales, but Jake's financial situation didn't leave him much choice. His ranch back in Colorado had gone to the bank because of debts. This map was his last hope. Walking down the main street of the abandoned town in the afternoon's brutal heat, every building's shuttered windows and broken glass chipped away at his courage. Ghost Creek was living up to its name, a genuine ghost town. The last residents had cleared out 10 years ago, but as Jake passed the old Red Canyon saloon, something caught his eye that stopped him cold. A thin beam of golden light seeping from the edge of a window. Ghost Creek had no electricity, hadn't had any for 20 years. That light had the warm golden glow of candlelight. Jake's heart began to race. Someone was living in this building. But who? And why? Moving his hand to rest on his gun handle, he carefully climbed the steps to the saloon. The wooden steps creaked under his weight. The door stood half open, and the warm air drifting out was very different from the dry desert wind outside. Inside he could smell the scent of hellish fire and, strangely, expensive perfume. Jake slowly pushed the door open and stepped inside. What he saw first took his breath away. In the center of the saloon, arranged on top of the old poker table, gold bars gleamed and sparkled, each one the size of his palm. Genuine gold bars that dazzled in the sunlight. But what really shocked Jake wasn't that. The woman standing behind the bar looked like she'd stepped out of a dream. About 30 years old, with long reddish-brown hair flowing over her shoulders, green eyes that seemed to penetrate right into Jake's soul. She wore a dusty rose-colored dress, old but quality. In her hand she held a glass of whiskey, and as if she'd known Jake was coming, she'd prepared a second glass. "Jake Miller," the woman said, her voice soft as velvet but determined. "I've been waiting for you." Jake's blood ran cold. How did this woman know him? How did she know his name? I don't know who you are, ma'am," Jake stammered. His eyes were still fixed on the gold bars on the table. "But I think there's been some kind of misunderstanding." The woman smiled, but it wasn't a comforting smile at all. "No misunderstanding, Jake. I'm Catherine Dalton, and you're here following the map your father left you." Jake's blood froze. No one else had ever seen the map his father, William Miller, had left him. Hell, no one even knew it existed. How? "Because that map was drawn by my father, Arthur Dalton," Catherine said, extending the glass toward Jake. "And this gold, it's just a very small part of the Crimson Valley treasure." Jake's hands trembled as he took the glass from Catherine. "The Crimson Valley treasure is legend. It never existed." A shadow crossed Catherine's face. It was real 20 years ago, until the blood started flowing. Just then, the distant sound of horse hooves froze them both. Multiple riders approaching the town fast. Catherine's face went white as a sheet. "He's coming." "Who's coming?" "Marcus Blackwood. And if he finds you here with me, we'll both die." But Jake didn't know yet that Catherine Dalton's story would draw him into the very center of a murder from 20 years ago and change his life forever. Catherine quickly gathered the gold bars from the table. "Jake, If you want to stay alive, do exactly what I tell you." The sound of hooves was getting closer. Jake could now make out at least 5 horses, all of them heading toward town fast. "But who are you? Is this gold really?" Questions later. Catherine cut him off with a sharp whisper. "Right now, follow me to the back of the saloon. There's a hidden exit." Catherine led him down a narrow corridor behind the saloon. In the corner of the wall there was an invisible panel. Catherine pressed on the panel and a secret door opened. "Now," Catherine whispered, "be very careful. This tunnel will take us to the other end of town. But first, I need to tell you the complete truth." Jake followed Catherine into the tunnel. The tunnel had clearly been dug by hand years ago. Its walls were reinforced with wooden supports. Old lanterns hanging from the ceiling lit the way. "Catherine," Jake whispered, "please explain what's happening. Why do you know my name? What was there between my father William and your father?" Catherine stopped and turned to Jake. In the lantern light, her face looked both beautiful and full of pain. "In 1854, my father Arthur Dalton and your father William Miller were partners," she said. "They operated a gold mine in Crimson Valley. It was a very successful partnership. In 2 years, they found the biggest gold vein in this region's history." Jake held his breath. And the third partner, Marcus Blackwood, tried to kill them." Catherine's revelation shocked Jake. His father had never mentioned such a partnership. Besides, he'd thought William Miller had died of natural causes. Did Marcus succeed? Catherine's eyes filled with tears. "He killed my father Arthur. Your father William managed to escape, but he was wounded. He split the map showing the location of the gold treasure in half, took one half with him, left the other half with my father. So how did you survive?" "I was 10 years old then. My father sent me to stay with my uncle the day before the attack. He sensed Marcus would betray them." As Jake tried to process this story, Catherine continued, "For 20 years, this gold has been hidden here. Marcus is hunting me because he thinks I have the other half of the map. But the truth is, we don't need both halves of the map, because the treasure isn't here." Jake was confused. "What do you mean it's not here? I just saw gold bars inside the saloon." "Those are bait, Jake, to draw Marcus here. The real Crimson Valley treasure is much bigger, and in a much more dangerous place." Sounds from above, footsteps, doors opening, searching sounds showed that Marcus and his men had arrived. Catherine grabbed Jake's arm. "Now listen to me very carefully. If Marcus finds you here, he'll realize you're William's son and kill you. But first, he'll try to get you to tell him where the map is." "The map's on me." Jake indicated his pocket. Catherine's eyes widened. "You brought it here." "Of course. I came to find the treasure." Catherine took a deep breath. "Then there's no turning back now. If Marcus gets that map, everything we've done for the last 20 years will be for nothing." "What have you done?" "Protected the treasure from Marcus. Because, Jake, the Crimson Valley treasure isn't just gold. There's something else my father and yours discovered. And if it falls into the wrong hands, all the innocent people in this region will die." At the end of the tunnel, a second secret door led them to the old church at the edge of town. Catherine carefully led Jake inside the church in the lantern light. "Jake, there's something I've been waiting for 20 years underneath this church. But first, I need to tell you the complete truth." The atmosphere inside the church was cool. Summer daylight streaming through the windows made dust particles dance. Catherine lifted a wooden panel near the altar. Underneath, stair steps were visible. "Catherine, please." Jake hesitated. "This treasure, does it really exist?" "It exists, Jake, but it's much more valuable than gold." They both descended to the basement. Catherine lit the lantern fixtures on the wall, illuminating the room. The sight Jake saw took his breath away. The basement was like a massive library. Hundreds of books, maps, and documents lined the walls. In the center sat a large table with various instruments, microscopes, chemistry tubes on top, and most importantly, a massive map hung on the wall. The most detailed map of Crimson Valley. Your father William and my father Arthur weren't just gold prospectors, Catherine explained. They were both scientists, geologists, and the gold vein they found in this valley was a sign of something much more valuable than gold. A sign of what? Catherine pointed to samples in glass cases on the table. Inside them were strange, metallically shimmering minerals. Radium, Jake. Pure radium, and uranium. The largest known natural radium deposit in the world is in this valley. In 1854, our fathers found something that modern science hadn't discovered yet. Jake's mind was spinning. What's radium? It can heal, but if used wrong, it can kill too. In very large quantities, in very dangerous ways. So why is Marcus after it? Catherine's face hardened. Because he learned that radium can be used in weapons manufacturing. If he controls this region, he becomes the most powerful arms dealer. Just then, footsteps from above startled them both. Marcus and his men had entered the church. Catherine. Marcus's voice was loud, angry. I know you're hiding in the basement of this church. We've played this game for 20 years. I'm sick of it. Catherine turned to Jake, her eyes holding both fear and determination. Jake, now listen to me very carefully. There's another hidden exit in the wall of this basement. I'm going to take you there, and you're going to escape. What about you? I'm going to face Marcus. Enough is enough. No. Jake was resolute. I can't leave you here alone. Jake, you're William's son. This treasure is your right too. But staying alive is more important than that right now. Footsteps could be heard on the stairs. Marcus was coming down. Catherine Dalton. Marcus's voice echoed in the basement. You've been hiding for 20 years, but the game's over now. But just then, Marcus Blackwood descended into the basement, and he saw Jake. Marcus Blackwood's appearance shocked Jake. The man he'd thought was a young partner 20 years ago was now in his 50s. His hair grayed, but still muscular and dangerous looking. His clothes were expensive, his gun the latest model, and it was clear the three men with him were professional killers. Well, Marcus smiled coldly when he saw Jake. Catherine, not just you. William Miller's son is here too. Jake's heart raced. Marcus had recognized him. Marcus Blackwood, right? Jake tried to keep his voice calm. That's me, and you're Jake Miller. You've got your father's face just like him. Marcus's eyes were evil. William left you what he stole from me 20 years ago, didn't he? What did he steal? The map, you fool boy. The map to the Crimson Valley treasure. Catherine stepped in. Marcus, Jake has nothing to do with this. Let him go. Marcus laughed. Oh, Catherine. Naive Catherine. Jake has everything to do with this, because his father William ran off with half the gold that belonged to me, and now this boy has come here, with that map. Marcus's men had surrounded Jake. There was no way to escape. Now Jake, Marcus approached, take out that map and put it on the table, or I'll do very bad things to Catherine. Jake looked at Catherine. Catherine was signaling him with her eyes not to do it. But one of Marcus's men had put a knife to Catherine's throat. Okay. Jake pulled the map from his pocket. But first know this, Marcus. My father William didn't steal anything. He took his rightful share. Rightful share? Marcus's voice rose. I put all the money into this partnership. They were just labor. Lies, Catherine shouted. Your money came from oil and arms dealing. Partnership bought with dirty money. Marcus slapped Catherine. Jake lunged forward in anger, but Marcus's men held him back. Now open the map, Jake. Show me where the real Crimson Valley treasure is. Jake spread the map on the table. The map was indeed complex, showing various points in the valley, mine entrances, secret passages. But the most important mark was the X marked main treasure. Marcus studied the map. So it's here 5 miles north of Red Canyon. Yes, Jake said. But Marcus, if what Catherine says is true, this treasure isn't just gold. There are very dangerous things too. Marcus laughed. Radium. Yes, I know. I've been researching for 10 years. This mineral is very valuable in weapons manufacturing. It can kill people. It can kill my enemies, Jake. That's my business. Marcus folded the map and put it in his pocket. Now Catherine and you are coming with me. We're going to the treasure together. What if we don't come? Marcus put his gun to Jake's head. Then you die here. But before Marcus could continue, Catherine whispered something that changed everything Jake thought he knew about the situation. Catherine's whisper stopped Jake cold. Marcus isn't just my business partner. He's the one who killed your brother Samuel. Jake's blood turned to ice. His brother Samuel had been found shot dead on a remote trail 6 months ago. His horse and supplies stolen. The sheriff claimed it was random bandits, but the case had gone cold. Samuel Keene was your brother. Catherine's voice was barely audible. I overheard Marcus bragging to his men about killing a rancher who wouldn't sell his water rights. He described the man's face, his horse, even the scar on his hand from a childhood accident. Dalton's vision blurred with rage. Samuel's death had been the final blow that forced him to sell everything and buy this remote cabin. Marcus hadn't just destroyed Catherine's life, he'd destroyed Jake's family. You're certain? Jake's voice came out as a growl. He kept your brother's watch, the one with initials carved inside. He showed it to me when he wanted to demonstrate what happened to men who opposed him. Jake stepped outside, his hand steady on his gun despite the fury coursing through his veins. Marcus stood 20 paces away, confident and relaxed, while his 2 men watched from the porch with eager anticipation. Before we do this, Jake called out, tell me about Samuel Keene. Marcus's confident expression flickered for just a moment. Never heard of him. Rancher who wouldn't sell his water rights. Shot on the North Trail 6 months ago. Now Marcus smiled genuinely, the mask of civility finally dropping completely. Oh, that's Samuel Keene. Stubborn fool thought his principles were worth more than his life. The admission hit Jake like a physical blow, but it also gave him something he'd been missing for months. Certainty. This wasn't just about protecting Catherine anymore. This was about justice for Samuel. He was my brother. Marcus's smile widened. Then this is even better than I thought. I get to finish what I started. The 2 men faced each other across the dusty clearing, hands hovering over their weapons. Jake could hear his own heartbeat, but underneath it was something else. Samuel's voice from their childhood, teaching him to shoot straight and stand up for what was right. On 3, Marcus called out. 1. Jake's mind cleared, focusing on the man who had murdered his brother and terrorized an innocent woman. 2. Time seemed to slow as both men's hands moved toward their guns. 3. The clearing exploded with gunfire. Marcus was fast, faster than most men Jake had ever faced. But grief and righteous anger had sharpened Jake's reflexes to a razor's edge. When the smoke cleared, Marcus Webb lay motionless in the dirt, his gun still half-drawn. But as Jake stood over his brother's killer, Marcus's 2 remaining men stepped off the porch with their weapons already drawn. The thin man's gun was already aimed at Jake's chest before he could react. Boss might be dead, but you still killed him. That makes you a wanted man. Jake's gun was empty, and reloading would take precious seconds he didn't have. The 2 men advanced slowly, savoring their advantage. Should have minded your own business, cowboy, the 3rd man said. Now you're going to pay for interfering. But before either man could pull their triggers, a rifle shot cracked from the cabin window. The thin man spun and fell, clutching his shoulder. Catherine stood framed in the doorway, holding an old hunting rifle with practiced ease. The next shot won't be a warning, she said calmly. The remaining gunman whirled toward her, but Jake used the distraction to dive behind Marcus's body and reload his weapon. When he came up firing, The last of Marcus's men was already running for his horse. Jake let him go. One witness to tell the story might actually work in their favor. Catherine lowered the rifle and walked over to where Marcus lay still. She looked down at the man who had controlled her life for months, and Jake expected to see relief or satisfaction. Instead, her face showed only exhaustion. "It's over," she said quietly, but Jake was studying Marcus's body, and something didn't add up. "Catherine, you said Marcus kept my brother's watch." She nodded. "He always wore it on a chain like a trophy." Jake knelt and searched Marcus's vest, finding the familiar silver watch that had belonged to their father before passing to Samuel. Seeing it again brought back a flood of memories. Christmas mornings, cattle drives, the proud day Samuel had inherited it. But as Jake opened the watch case, he found something unexpected. Inside, along with the initials SK their father had carved, was a folded piece of paper. "What is it?" Catherine asked. Jake unfolded the paper carefully. It was a map drawn in Samuel's handwriting, marking the location of something in the mountains north of here. At the bottom, Samuel had written, "For my brother Jake, if anything happens to me." Samuel knew Marcus was going to kill him, Jake realized. He hid this message knowing I'd eventually get the watch back. Catherine moved closer to study the map. "What do you think he wanted you to find?" Before Jake could answer, the sound of approaching horses made them both freeze. More riders were coming up the trail, moving fast. "The man who escaped," Catherine said. "He must have gone for help." But as the riders emerged from the trees, Jake saw something that changed everything. The lead rider wore a sheriff's badge, and behind him rode 6 armed deputies. "That's Sheriff Morrison," Catherine whispered. "He's been looking for me ever since I disappeared. Marcus told him I was stolen by bandits." Jake looked at the dead body of Marcus Webb, then at the pregnant woman beside him holding a smoking rifle. In about 30 seconds, he was going to have to explain to a sheriff why he'd killed a supposedly respectable man and why he was harboring a kidnapped woman. But the map in his hand suggested Samuel had left him more than just a clue about his death. Sheriff Morrison dismounted slowly, his weathered face taking in the scene. Marcus's body, the wounded gunman crawling toward his horse, and Catherine standing beside Jake with the rifle. "Miss Catherine," the sheriff said carefully. "Marcus Webb reported you were kidnapped. Said he was organizing a search party." Catherine stepped forward, her voice steady and clear. "Sheriff Morrison, Marcus Webb forced me into hiding to escape his violence. When I discovered he had killed this man's brother, he became even more dangerous." The sheriff's eyes moved to Marcus's body. "And this man?" "Marcus Webb murdered my brother Samuel 6 months ago," Jake said, pulling out the watch. "He kept this as a trophy. Miss Catherine overheard him bragging about it." Sheriff Morrison examined the watch, recognizing the initials and the distinctive scratches Samuel had always complained about. "I remember this watch. Samuel never went anywhere without it. Marcus also tried to burn down my legally purchased property and threatened to kill Miss Catherine. I challenged him to a fair fight and he accepted." The wounded gunman, now mounted on his horse, called out desperately, "Sheriff, they murdered Mr. Webb in cold blood. He was trying to rescue his friend." But Catherine had moved to her bag inside the church and returned with a bundle of papers. "These are documents showing Marcus's extortion activities. You'll see the threats written in Marcus's own hand." Sheriff Morrison studied the papers, his expression growing darker. "These documents systematic extortion and threats against multiple families in the territory." The wounded gunman realized his story was falling apart and spurred his horse toward the tree line. But 2 deputies were already moving to intercept him. "The real question," Sheriff Morrison said, "is what happens now?" Jake unfolded Samuel's map and showed it to the sheriff. "My brother left me this before he died. It marks the location of evidence he gathered about Marcus's illegal activities. Stolen property, extorted families, murdered ranchers." "Samuel was investigating Marcus?" the sheriff asked. "Apparently for months. He knew Marcus would kill him eventually, so he documented everything and hid it where only I would think to look." 3 days later, following Samuel's map, they recovered detailed records of Marcus Webb's crimes hidden in a cave north of the church. The evidence implicated several corrupt officials and led to the recovery of stolen property worth thousands of dollars. But as they explored the cave system, Jake and Catherine discovered something that would change their understanding of everything. Jake, a voice called from the depths of the cave. My son, is that you? Jake's heart stopped. It was his father William's voice. In the deepest chamber, Jake found William Miller alive but weak, cared for by Arthur Dalton, who had also survived Marcus's attack 20 years ago. We've been living here, protecting the real treasure, Arthur explained as Jake embraced his father. The radium deposits are massive, Jake. In the wrong hands, they could power weapons that destroy entire cities. William handed Jake a metallic device, the key Catherine had mentioned. This controls the extraction process safely. Used wrong, the entire deposit becomes unstable and could explode. What do you want me to do with this? The right thing, son. These materials can heal people if used properly, but they can also cause unimaginable destruction. Their reunion was interrupted by the arrival of Vincent Cross, a pale-eyed man in black clothes, accompanied by armed men who moved with military precision. Jake Miller, Cross said, his voice carrying an accent Jake couldn't place. I represent certain government interests. We're willing to pay very handsomely for information about the radium deposits. Not interested. Cross smiled coldly. Then perhaps you'd be more cooperative, knowing we've already questioned your associates thoroughly. We know about the cave system, the radium deposits, everything. Cross revealed that federal agents had been tracking the situation. That word of the discovery had reached Washington. The United States government is prepared to offer $1 million for the location of all deposits and the extraction key. And if I refuse, then accidents start happening to people you care about. Your father, William, Arthur Dalton, the lovely Catherine. These are dangerous times, Mr. Miller. But Catherine stepped forward with quiet confidence. Mr. Cross, before you make threats, you should know something important about these deposits. What? My mother didn't just help hide maps 20 years ago. She rigged all the major radium sites with explosives. Cross's confidence wavered. You're bluffing. Catherine produced a small device from her pocket. A metallic contraption with several levers and a prominent red button. Remote detonation system using a telegraphic relay. My mother was quite the engineer. She demonstrated by pushing one of the smaller levers. In the distance, they heard a muffled explosion. That was the smallest test site, Catherine explained calmly. Would you like me to demonstrate on one of the major deposits? After several hours of tense negotiation, they reached an agreement that would satisfy both national security concerns and moral obligations. The United States government would extract radium from the mapped deposits, but 50% of all extracted materials would be donated to medical research institutions for treating diseases like cancer. Catherine would retain the detonation device as insurance that the government honored their commitment to peaceful applications. Jake would oversee the extraction process using his father's key, ensuring the materials were handled safely. Vincent Cross was visibly unhappy with the arrangement but had no choice but to accept it given Catherine's leverage. 6 months later, Jake and Catherine were married in a small ceremony at their Colorado ranch. Arthur and William had recovered their health and served as witnesses to the wedding. The radium extraction operation was proceeding smoothly under joint government and civilian oversight. Medical applications were already showing remarkable promise in treating various cancers and other diseases. Cross had been reassigned to other duties after expressing repeated concerns about allowing civilians to maintain such significant leverage over government operations. Colonel Harrison, Cross's replacement, visited the ranch periodically to ensure the partnership remained stable. Unlike Cross, Harrison seemed genuinely committed to the peaceful applications of the radium. You know, Harrison said one evening as he prepared to leave after a quarterly review, when this all started, I thought you were just two people who'd gotten in over their heads. And now? Jake asked. Harrison smiled. Now I think maybe you were exactly what this situation needed. People who cared more about doing the right thing than about profit or power. After Harrison left, Jake found Catherine sitting on their porch, watching the sunset paint the Colorado mountains in shades of gold and red. Any regrets, he asked, settling down beside her. Catherine leaned against him, her hand resting on her slightly rounded belly. She was carrying their first child. About which part? Marrying you? Trusting the government with half our radium? Or keeping a doomsday device in our bedroom dresser? Jake laughed, placing his hand over hers. Any of it. All of it. Catherine was quiet for a moment, watching the stars begin to appear in the darkening sky. Jake, do you think we made the right choice? Which choice? All of them. Starting with that day you walked into the saloon in Ghost Creek. Jake thought about everything that had happened since that sweltering summer day when he'd first seen golden light streaming through saloon windows. The discovery of Catherine, the confrontation with Marcus, the revelation about his father, the government negotiations, and now their peaceful life together. I think, Jake said slowly, that sometimes you don't get to choose between right and wrong. Sometimes you only get to choose between wrong and more wrong. When that happens, you do the best you can with what you've got. Catherine squeezed his hand. That's very wise. I learned it from someone pretty smart. They sat in comfortable silence as the Colorado sky deepened from purple to black. Somewhere in the Nevada mountains, radium deposits were being carefully extracted under the watchful eyes of both government agents and civilian monitors. In Denver and other cities, doctors were using radioactive materials to save lives that would have been lost to cancer and other diseases. And in their bedroom dresser, a small device ensured that this delicate balance between national security and humanitarian applications would be maintained. Jake Miller had started out looking for gold in an abandoned mining town. Instead, he'd found something much more valuable. A partner who shared his commitment to doing what was right, even when it wasn't easy. The Crimson Valley treasure had indeed changed his life, just not in the way he'd expected when he first pushed open that weathered saloon door and saw a pair of startled green eyes staring back at him. Some stories end with the hero riding off into the sunset. This one ended with the hero sitting on his porch holding hands with the pregnant woman he loved, keeping watch over secrets that could change the world. And as Jake reflected on their journey from that first encounter in Ghost Creek to this peaceful evening in Colorado, he realized that sometimes the greatest treasures come with the greatest responsibilities. The radium they discovered could heal or destroy depending on who controlled it and how it was used. Their choice to share control between government and civilian oversight, to dedicate half the materials to healing rather than weapons, had created something unprecedented. A partnership based on mutual trust and shared values rather than pure power or profit. The device Catherine kept as insurance wasn't really about the threat of destruction. It was about maintaining the balance they'd fought so hard to achieve. As long as both sides honored their commitments, the trigger would never need to be pulled. And sometimes, Jake reflected, that's the most heroic ending of all, not a dramatic finale, but the quiet vigilance required to protect something precious from those who would corrupt it. The Crimson Valley treasure was safe. The people he loved were safe. And somewhere in the growing darkness, new life was already beginning to stir, carrying forward the promise of a better world built on the foundation of choices made with wisdom and courage. Jake Miller had found his treasure after all. It just wasn't made of gold.